Hello, my name is John James and I'm a writer and campaigner for male victims of female perpetrated domestic violence and an advocate for men's mental health. Today on FTD Talk, Nick will be talking to Craig, who will be talking about his abuse, parental alienation and his recovery from abuse and trauma. It's a very powerful conversation and a very interesting one. I hope you find it interesting too. But before you go, please remember to press that like button, smash that subscribe button. The bigger the channel gets, the more people we can help. So, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and don't forget, don't let anybody make you feel afraid. Peace.
Well, good day and welcome to this episode of FTD Talk. I'm Nick and I'm here to talk to Craig, who's got a story for us today, which is one about abuse, but in particular, we're going to talk about parental alienation. So welcome, Craig. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for the invite, Nick.
No, thank you. We're delighted that you've been able to join us and are able to speak out and be another voice for male victims. So thank you very much. So Craig, let's first of all talk about. I understand that in the past you were married, and that marriage was potentially abusive. Is that right?
Yes. I was married for. Well, the relationship went for 8 years.
Okay.
And I have 3 boys.
Okay, as part of that marriage.
Yes. Yeah. So fairly ordinary story. I had a pretty interesting career as a chef. I was successful in gaining a job with a pretty prestigious business in Cornwall. Moved down there with what was then our small family, just myself, my wife, and my son. And whilst we were there, 2 more boys.
Lovely.
Nothing
Okay.
particularly remarkable about anything. There were ups and downs. The distance between the family, the base being in the northwest and us living in the southwest, quite a long distance. Some of that was challenging.
Yeah.
And I think that led to the start of the breakdown of the marriage.
Okay. And a lot of sort of abuse victims, they talk about, red flags, things that, cause concerns and make you start to feel that perhaps you are in an unhealthy relationship. So what were the sort of signs that made you think that things were getting a bit unhealthy between yourself and your wife?
There were small instances to start with, complaints. She was particularly vicious about time that I spent with the family. Obviously, with the job that I was doing, we were led by customer demands in the tourist industry.
Yeah.
She was particularly dissatisfied in general, and I could never put my finger on why she was particularly unhappy. We lived in a nice house, we were financially secure, we had a good lifestyle that would be the envy of a lot of people, but she was unhappy with the distance between where we lived and where her family lived, and the amount of time that we were able to spend with them. In hindsight, I think a lot of that dissatisfaction was from pressure from her mother.
Okay.
I'll look at that later on.
Yeah.
To be honest, I never saw any red flags.
Okay.
At that time, I saw nothing.
Okay.
In hindsight, yeah, there's lots of things I could say were not right. The frequency of having quite loud rows, the way that she would bring in the children into those rows. There was one instance where she told my eldest son that she was going to go and find a new daddy, and presented the boy in front of me to tell me that.
Yeah.
And when I challenged him, he got extremely upset about it, obviously. I didn't make an issue of that, and you just walk away. And it was only something that I recanted later on when we were looking at it after things came to a head. But I had colleagues at work saying, this isn't right. It's not a normal relationship. You need to look at this. But I was in a supervisory position, and people who were noticing these behaviour patterns were younger than me. And I have to admit it, I dismissed them. I didn't listen to it. If there was a serious incident and I was going into work with facial injury, I tended to brush it off or turn it into a joke. There's nothing wrong, guys, ha ha ha, it's just a bit of a...
So Craig, some of these, whatever we call them, arguments, fights, whatever, were resulting in you getting injuries then, physical injuries?
Yeah, I did have an incident where I had a physical injury, but I didn't consider it serious.
No. Do you mind me asking?
It was more of...
Sorry, Craig, apologies, go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, it wasn't... It wasn't serious enough to take any hospital. It wasn't even treated. I went to work with scratches down one side of my face.
And how did they come about, if you don't mind me asking?
It was an argument over... I can't even remember. I can't remember what the argument was over, but the arguments tended to be staged and extremely trivial. And that particular argument was significant because I had a sort of an interview that day, which was cancelled because I had these scratches on my face. And that was something of concern. I think I got taken to one side by my line manager on that occasion. But again, I said it's not serious. It's just a row between a man and his wife. She's not happy at the moment, and it got a little bit out of hand. It's not like I'm being punched or kicked or anything like that. And it's still to this day maintained that the physical violence was few and far between. She was not a physically violent person. It was just one or two incidents that were isolated. It wasn't a regular occurrence. But by virtue of that, it was a red flag that was missed.
Yeah, sure. And sorry to ask the question, Craig, so forgive me, but in those sort of like rare moments where she was physical, were you physical in any way? Like, was it kind of like 6 to 1/2 a dozen of the other, or was it one-sided?
That particular incident was one-sided because it just came out of nowhere. She intended to leave a mark.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. She didn't intend to cause pain or serious injury or anything like that. But she wanted to leave a mark. Yeah. She wanted to leave a mark so that my next day will be awkward, knowing that I had this interview.
Yeah. And if we flipped it and said that you as the man did that to her as a woman, would you play it down as much as you are at the moment?
Well, there was an incident that I got physical with her, and I slapped her across the face.
Right. Okay.
And that was a result of a blazing row and she was smashing items up in the kitchen, and this was in front of the children. So I slapped her across the face.
Yeah.
And it was instinctive. It was my issue was, I need to make this stop.
Yeah.
She's not being reasonable. I can't speak to her. How do I bring this to an end?
Yeah. And this was in front of the children, did you say? She was doing this. She was smashing up the kitchen.
This was in front of the children. And the row was in front of the children. She'd gone into the kitchen and started to smash small items, nothing very big. It's just to have an impact, make some noise and a bit of mess. And I slapped her across the face in the kitchen. That was out of sight of the children. I'll be honest with you, if we were in a different room, because it was a knee-jerk and almost a reaction without thinking, I might have done it in front of the children. I can't say I wouldn't have done, but it was just a knee-jerk reaction. And as soon as that happened, everything stopped. And she said, "Ha, I'm going to ruin your life," and immediately phoned the police.
Right. Okay. And did the police come?
Yes, the police attended, and I had to give a statement. I was arrested. Once I'd had the statement, I was offered a caution, which I accepted. And then that was, the interview stopped. I was offered the caution. I accepted the caution. But the officer that interviewed me and was actually in attendance at the house, said, "I want to talk to you now. We've finished with the interview and this case is on the other side. I want to ask you some questions."
Yeah.
And she asked me about a dozen questions, and it was stuff from, are you free to go out in the evening with friends? Do you socialize? Are you being monitored? Do you have access to all your accounts? Do you have to submit your phone for inspection? And after we went through all of those questions, she said, I believe you're experiencing domestic abuse. And she referred me to the Mankind Initiative.
Oh, wow. Okay, so would that have been like around 2012-ish, 2013? It was
the end of, yes, towards the end of 2012.
Okay, so the police having come out because your wife called them, interviewed you or spoke to you, you ended up with a caution, but they recognised from speaking to you that you were in an abusive relationship and that you were being controlled in some way.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Now,
so
as I said, the referral was made, and the police officer wanted to follow up 7 days later to make sure that I had actually been in contact. And I think it was at that point, it was only at that point that I thought, this is serious, and it's an abusive relationship.
So at that point, Craig, the police, they must have spoken to your wife at that time as well, but they took no action against your wife or didn't speak to her at that time about anything. Is that right, or did they?
She made a statement, and the police thought that the two statements matched, and were happy that that there was no inconsistencies, that I had admitted what I'd done, and they thought the caution was the best. Yeah, best
but her behaviour in terms of smashing up bits of the kitchen, especially in front of the children, that wasn't a referral to social services or anything like that. They didn't see fit.
There was not at that point. They did refer the matter to the social services later on.
But did they refer it on the basis that you'd been cautioned, or on the basis that she was suspected of controlling you? Do you know?
No, there was no referral made at that point. Yeah, the referral was done about 3 months later.
Yeah. Okay. So so you sought help from Mankind, so the charity Mankind.
Yep.
And are you able to give us any sort of testimony in terms of how they were in terms of supporting you? And
bearing in mind that at the point of getting in touch with Mankind, I was still not convinced that I was in an abusive relationship. The remarkable thing about Mankind was that I entered into it quite skeptical as to what was going on and what help they could offer. As time went on, it occurred to me that they seemed to be predicting what was going to happen from week to week. They were predicting my wife's behavior, making suggestions as how I could deal with it and move forward, but saying, look, these are the pitfalls and this is what you need to look out for. This is like, this could happen. Be careful. And I think it was that suggestion that there was a playbook or certainly a pattern of behavior that they were aware of that sort of made me sit up and listen as to, right, this could be an abusive relationship. And we actually managed to get onto marriage guidance counselling, which was a short program. And it wasn't very successful. And Mankind had said that we don't think that this is going to work. We appreciate you trying, but it's not going to be too fruitful. And the format was you.
Sorry, I've interrupted you again, Craig. I do apologise, but is that because just reflecting on my own experience, one of the things where I must, on a personal level, drew things to a close is that realization that an abuser isn't going to change, not certainly quickly or easily. So did you find that was a kind of a light bulb moment? You kind of realized that actually getting change out of this person is not going to happen.
You get a mindset of, I've got to make an enormous effort for the sake of the children. I'm going to have to change lots of things. We've got to look into what's wrong, what improvements can be made. And I thought the counselling would be one step. And I was warned, this may not work. As it happens, it was 6 weeks of my wife telling everybody what a bastard I was. And on the last session, this marriage guidance counsellor said, I've listened to everything that, that you've all your concerned and everything that you've put forward. And it says, and you constantly tell me that he doesn't let you speak and he doesn't let you talk and he's absolutely controlling. Because, but for 6 weeks, this man said nothing and just let you get everything off your chest. And we're coming to the end of the session now, and he's hardly had any input whatsoever. And then the counsellor turned and said, have you ever considered of supporting your husband? And that was the end of it. She just stood up and walked out. And the counsellor was I said, I'm just absolutely, totally and utterly frustrated that it was all how unhappy she was, what a rotten person you are. But, she was describing someone who's absolutely the opposite. So it came to an end shortly after that.
Yeah, if there are any abuse victims and survivors listening to that, they'll all be nodding their heads at you, Craig. I assure you, they'll all be nodding their heads at that one. Crikey. Okay, so I take it. So what happened then? Did the marriage come to a close? What happened to the next, and where did it go from there?
Yeah, the marriage came to an end. At that time, we were living in North Shropshire, and there was an almighty row, which it just appeared to be set up. It was something I'd walked into after a day at work, and she's already got a play all
She's already got
planned
lined
out.
up what
We're
she's going to have a go
right
at you about.
fight
Yeah,
about this.
yeah.
And the mankind had already said, if it's going to kick off like that, remove yourself from the situation, go into a different room. Follows you into that room, move out of that room, go outside, go for a walk, but remove yourself from the argument, see if things calm down, and then go back.
Yeah.
On this occasion, she was following me around, and I tried leaving the house, and again, she's following me outside the house. So I phoned the police, and I wanted to speak to somebody in the domestic abuse team, because I couldn't get through to Mankind Initiative. The telephone helpline is limited. It only operates on limited hours. So sometimes it can be very, very difficult to speak to somebody. And they always said, if you feel that it's going to escalate, phone the police. So while speaking to the call handler...
Just to clarify on that, that's because Mankind operating voluntary phone lines, aren't they? So they've probably got limited...
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, just to quantify that. So, sorry, carry on, Craig. Sorry.
So the call handler, who was just taking the details of the call, would not put me through to a DV unit. She said she could hear what was going on in the background, and she said, "Is that your wife?" I said, "Yes. I just need some advice. Will you put me through to And she said, "I'm sending 2 officers out."
Yeah, they could hear all hell breaking loose in the background.
They could hear everything that was going on in the background. And I said, if you send officers out, it will make the matter a lot worse. You need just stay away. And she said, "No, this is my call. I can hear what's going on in the background. I'm dispatching officers now. Try and keep calm and just keep some distance. They'll be with you in a short while." And they were there in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And the community officer was the first to arrive, and then we waited for a female officer. When they turned up, we were both separated, and I was made to give a victim statement, which I thought was peculiar because I wasn't actually making a complaint of anything. I was looking for advice, but they took statements from both of us and then went back to the house and said to my wife, "Look, you can't stay here. It's not safe. You need to, you're a safeguarding issue. You need to find somewhere else to stay tonight."
They said that to your wife, not to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. So not knowing how it was framed, she contacted her parents, who are an hour and 20 minutes away. And they came to gather some things, and she had to leave the house, but she was allowed to take the kids.
Okay, and why was she allowed to take the kids if she was a safety problem?
Because it only affected me.
Okay, in what, in their opinion? Is that was their...
As far as anything escalating, the row was between me and her, and not the children. Okay. And the risk was borne by me. So she's removed with the children. She doesn't bear any safeguarding issue.
Okay.
With the children.
At no point were you asked to leave them? They didn't say to you,
"No,
Craig, you must leave."
No.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Okay, good. All right. So they asked her to leave, and she did leave, and she went to her parents with the kids.
Yeah. And it was that point I made the decision that she wasn't coming back.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's enough time had lapsed, and I said it's not going to work, and she didn't come back to the family home.
Okay, and is it right she didn't come back to the family home then? Is that right? She didn't?
Yeah, she didn't. No.
Yeah. Okay. So are we are we at the point there where you're filing for divorce then? Is that the point we're at there?
Well, no. We had contact for about 6 months after that.
Okay.
And I had contact with the children, and we were.
And was she living with the parents at this point?
She lived with her parents for a short while. I think it was about 6 weeks, and then she got. She rented a property very close to where her parents live,
which is an hour and 20 minutes away.
But that's an hour and 20 minutes away from where I lived.
Okay.
So yeah, she set a family home with the children there, with the support of her mum and dad, who were absolutely delighted that the whole family had moved back, so to speak, and were literally in the next street.
Okay. And how often were you seeing your boys at that point?
Once a week.
Right. So was it weekend arrangement, was it? Or?
No overnights. It would just be a few hours, and it will be at the whim of my ex-wife. So there will be some days when I will go over there, and the eldest had been taken out for the day by the grandparents, or one of the children was sick, or there's quite a few times when I would be literally 20 minutes from the house, and then the contact was cancelled.
And how old were your boys at this point, roughly?
8, 2, and 4.
Okay, and up to and including this point, what was the relationship like with your 3 boys?
Yeah, very good. We it's just like any other father. We did day trips out. We went on holidays. You used to spend time with each individually. We do different things, visit farms. It's like any other dad. You have sort of leisure time, and you'd also do mundane stuff like go and do the shopping or.
But it was a happy relationship between you and your boys. You had fun times, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So quote unquote normal father son sort of relationship up to that point.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened to this contact then with the children? Because obviously I know that your story is going to be about being alienated from your kids. So how did that happen? How did that come about? Was it a slow burn, or like what kind of led into that?
I think that the dynamic had. I think that the dynamic that act was already underway. A conversation that I had with my father said, my eldest son does not have a very good opinion of you. He says, and I think it's coming from your in-laws. So I think not only the mother was critical, but I think her parents were drip feeding this narrative of alienation for some time. I don't think it was a new thing. When I got into a new relationship, then it ramped up dramatically. And around that time, my eldest son was referred to the NSPCC by his school nurse, by their pastoral department. And they were very concerned of his mental health. So in a brief conversation, he said, what's the issue? They knew that the family had broken down, and they knew that my eldest was not in the regular contact with me that he'd been used to up until we'd, the family breakdown. And it was at that point that things really accelerated. So the school referred mum and eldest son to the DART program, which is Domestic Abuse Recovering Together.
And sorry, Craig, is that
referral was made?
Sorry, Craig, is that an NSPCC program, or is that something independent?
It's an NSPCC program.
Yeah.
Which can be run independently now, but at that time, in 2013, it was a pilot scheme, and they were looking to introduce this across the estate.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So the ex and my eldest were referred to the NSPCC, where she recounted the horror of her abusive relationship, and I quote, how she fled the family home. And their response was, we have this scheme where we they look at they look at helping the mother and the child together, and it's over, I think, a 10-week period, and there's group sessions or individual sessions, and it's quite a comprehensive program. And they agreed to take the two of them. Now, at that time, I was suspicious as to what was going on. So I contacted the NSPCC as Dad, and I managed to get hold of the counsellor who was looking after my son's case. And I'd been told that upon referral, my eldest boy was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. So we got in touch with the NSPCC. The referral had been made for the DART program. Now, when talking to the counsellor, she'd said that although there were not all aspects of the DART program were applicable to my son's case, he would benefit from a considerable portion of that because of the state of his mental health at that time, and they thought that it was a benefit to participate in that, so that he could overcome some of those issues. The problem with that is they've put him on a 10-week course where he's been told, I'm a perpetrator of domestic abuse. And they've based that referral on the say-so of the mother and nothing else. If they'd been in touch with West Mercia Police in Shropshire, they may have had indication as to what the behaviour was prior to the breakdown of the marriage, but they didn't. If they'd been in touch with social services, they would have had a similar report. But again, no checks and no balances.
So to your knowledge, they didn't get in touch? Because, I mean, that's basically a disclosure, isn't it? It's a safeguarding disclosure. If a mother goes to the NSPCC and says, I'm a victim of domestic abuse and my children have been subject to that's a safeguarding disclosure. So legally, they would need to refer that on. So to your knowledge, they didn't?
By their admission, they didn't.
By their admission, they didn't? Oh, so you actually asked them that?
Yes.
Do you know why they didn't refer that on?
They didn't feel that it was necessary to investigate that because it was a referral from the school. So it's already come from the school nurse. She's a health professional. And as they'd already said, not all of the aspects of the program were applicable to that situation, but he would have benefited from some of the counselling to help with some of the mental issues that he was experiencing. You know, you've got a young boy there of 8 years old who was outgoing, had a large circle of friends, bright, intelligent, fun-loving, and at this point in time, he was practically a wreck. So they put him on on this program, which has been completed, and at the end of that, the position was, my ex-wife now has a masthead from the NSPCC, which says that I'm a domestic abuser.
All based on what she's told them.
Yes, but to have the backup of that charity put me in a position where if I was to take that to family court, I didn't have a chance. That would be absolutely solid evidence for no contact, one letter every 3 months.
And just to clarify, is your son roughly 9 years old at this point, the eldest?
He'll be 18 in January.
Okay, so but at this point, when he's having this support through the NSPCC or the DART program,
yeah,
he's roughly 8 years old, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're basically, I mean, you know, on the one hand, I'm sympathetic to the NSPCC, who are dealing with what they perceive as a victim, and they, in some respects, they've got to believe, but then at the same time, utterly irresponsible to not share that information with other agencies, and utterly irresponsible to, on the basis of that information, i.e. your wife, to effectively gaslight an 8-year-old child. That's basically what they've done, isn't it?
It is.
They've gaslit your 8-year-old son, or your wife has, and the NSPCC have reinforced that gaslighting.
I think it's certainly. I'm certainly suspicious of the organisation as a whole, because if you go on the NSPCC's learning website, their program is aimed purely at mothers. No, if a male single parent has these issues, there is no DART program that will take a man onto that program.
Yeah, so this is a living example of why a gender-based narrative around domestic abuse harms people, and included in that is children. It is harmful to have a gender-based narrative around abuse. It's cranky, and you're testament to that. Yeah,
the NSPCC quote. I quoting them now. There is a strong body of evidence demonstrating that females are disproportionately affected by domestic abuse. And they cite the Office for National Statistics in 2017 and Safe Lives, which is true. Those statistics do show that women are disproportionately affected. However, it is a 60-40 split at that time. And we're not taking into account the amount of men who do not report.
Well, it's the Office of National Statistics that also say that men are 3 times less likely to report.
Exactly. So if you've got 40% of the population being excluded there in the first instance, but if you read further up in the evidence and evaluation section, the barriers to improvement of the delivery of the DART program, and there were 3 barriers. One of them was some mothers resuming relationships with the perpetrator after the intervention, which I can understand would be problematic to them. And I would not be surprised that that happens in a significant number of cases. challenging behaviour in some of the children's groups. Again, these are issues that they need to deal with, because you've got traumatised children that are being put into these situations. But one of the barriers, they say, is contact with the father. Nothing else, just contact with the father is a barrier to the DART program. So not only are they lacking in checks and balances to understand the suitability of a candidate being put on this program, they are also moving for zero contact with the father whilst this program is being undertaken. And it's wrong.
Good grief. Good grief. I mean, because one of the things I was going to ask, well, actually, I'll come to that a bit later, because I've got something I wanted to show you about the NSPCC. But before we touch on that, Craig, I just want to, so we're still back in sort of 2013-ish. So, and that you are gradually being alienated from your boys. What was the long-term outcome of that then? What's happened? What is your relationship with your children?
Yeah, so the escalation of the alienation came about of me entering into a relationship with another woman.
Yeah.
She has 3 children of her own. And my ex was stalking her and her children via social media. And what was happening was she was harvesting images to build up a portfolio of my new girlfriend at that time and her children. And she was presenting this portfolio to my eldest and saying, your dad's got a new life now. This is the new woman. These are her children. These are his new children now. He's not interested in you. And you should stay away from them because they're likely to bully you.
Sorry, Craig, how do you know she was saying that to the kids? How do you know that?
At that time, I still had contact with my eldest son, and he told me what she was saying. And he said, and he explained, I don't want to meet these people. I don't want to, because Mum said they're going to bully me. The ex was ramping things up on that side by sending friend requests to these children, which they were confused about, because they said, like, who is this woman and why are they sending me a friend request? That actually turned into fear shortly afterwards, because at the same time, the police had been sent to do a safe and well check. My ex had contacted the police and said he's involved with a family with children and he's violent and you need to do a safe and well check. And this had come via the NSPCC. So they had to do it. As it happens, it was a community officer that knew what had gone on because he'd been involved from day one, and they came to do the safe and well check, and they did it as sensitively and as considerately as they possibly could. But when she turned up and said, I know this family, I know the situation that's going on here, I'll take this up. It was at that point that suggested getting in touch with the National Stalking Helpline to see if we could get some sort of action against this this behaviour, because my partner's children were scared now. They were worried about this, and in the end, the Stalking Helpline put pressure on the police, and my ex was issued with police information notice, which is effectively a cease and desist. And it was at that point that she said, no more contact. And she blocked every single means of contact with the children, whether it was email, social media, mobile telephone. She changed her telephone number and made it very, very clear that if I was to have any direct contact with her, she would report it to the police as a stalking matter, and for all inquiries to go through her mother, who didn't reply to a single one. And that's effectively where contact finished.
Wow. And I'm not a legal expert, but I'm thinking that as a father having children within a marriage, you have parental responsibility of these children, and there's no court order that says otherwise. So do you not have any say in kind of like what school they go to, where they live, decisions about, you know, school reports, decisions about, you know, what they do and things like that? Have you had any?
We initially, yeah, that's true. We initially had cooperation from the schools with reports, copy photographs, things like that. But that stopped, and the later academy wasn't cooperative at all. I do have parental responsibility, but that's just to make sure that they are paid child support. I don't have any parental rights. From the point of her saying, if you contact me directly, I will pursue you for harassment. That warning's been made, and I am liable if I was to go through. So the only course of action to take would be family court, and I will be going up against somebody who's got an NSPCC masthead saying this man is an abuser. And CAFCAS would just have to take one look at that and say that's all the evidence that we need. No contact, no direct contact, one letter every quarter.
And you've been paying child maintenance?
Yes.
So as a father, you've been financially supporting your children, but you can't see them or have any say in their well-being or welfare. When was the last time you saw your boys?
Father's Day, 9 years ago.
Wow. I can't believe that. I'm devastated for you. Shortly after that time, my own mental health took a tumble, as you would expect. And I ended up on antidepressants, I was for anxiety, and I'm very much of the theory that if your children are to turn up at your house one day, unexpected, just right out of the blue, knock on the door, hi Dad, how are you doing? I think it's very important how they find you. So there's no way that I wanted them to see me, hungover or drunk, living in squalor, surrounded by empty beer cans and cigarette butts. So I had to have a period where I was working on myself. So with the mental health thing, that was difficult. I was, my job, my business suffered. We were financially, pretty wrecked when my ex left. She left quite a lot of debt. Not as much as some people, but there was a sizable amount of debt which needed to be dealt with. And it's difficult. You get into a rut. You get into this sort of pit where that's very, very difficult to get out. And all the time you're conscious, that I've got these 3 boys, and
I can't really, I don't want to fall apart just, because, at any time they could be here and I have to be ready at any time. And I just thought, after a couple of years of living in this fog that was connected with the tablets that I was taking, I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. Went to cold turkey and threw the tablets away. Because what they were doing is they were suppressing everything that was about me. So these drugs, you take them because it helps you cope with an adverse situation. And they work. It stops you from overthinking. It stops you from over-analyzing things. It makes things easier to deal with. You can, but by doing that, it puts you into a bit of a stupor. I was interested in the dynamic of male suicide, and there was lots of cases where I thought, this is being treated as an illness. Even when we talk about PTSD, they say it's a stress disorder. Well, it's not a disorder. This is a perfectly normal reaction. It's actually a trauma. If you take a normal man, put him into a theatre of combat, he's going to be traumatized. We can expect that. That's a normal reaction. So why are we treating it as a disorder? And what I'd been going through was a trauma that had been inflicted on me by a third party or third parties. So I had to get help for that and come out of it. And that's how I've always held that belief that, it's not a disorder. It's not an illness that you have these thoughts. It's a normal reaction. You're facing something that you cannot seem to overcome. And the only way out is an exit, is the final exit. And we shouldn't be treating this as an illness. We should be treating it in a different way. It's like if I was to kick somebody in the leg, they'll get a bruise, they'll limp, but after time it'll heal, fix, go back, and we move on. It's exactly the same with what we're experiencing with mental health issues as a result of family breakdown. We have to talk about it. We have to treat it. In time, it will fix, and then we move on. We don't use it as a stick to beat people with afterwards, saying they're mentally ill. They're not mentally ill. It's an injury.
Yeah, I mean the anguish that separation from your children must cause is kind of unthinkable, really. So what Craig, what do you think about the section of society that tries to argue, and it's quite topical because it's come up on social media quite a lot recently, that parental alienation is a concept or a theory that is unproven or is used as a weapon against mothers. I mean, tell me what you think about that.
It's junk science, and it doesn't actually make a great deal of sense. But we're not given the opportunity to scrutinize this theory. The people that are putting down these recommendations to the government, it isn't challenged. We're not allowed to challenge it. You look at the committee meetings that take place when government's looking for guidance for changing legislation. It's the same faces. It's the same faces every time. You might have Mark Brooks from Mankind Initiative slotted in there. You might see Phil Mitchell. I know there's lots of people involved in the background, but we're not actually getting to the front. And we don't have the power to hold these people to account. We're only going to get power when we can get our agenda on the table, and then we can scrutinise this doctrine that's being proposed as worthy of changing legislation.
Yeah. Well,
if you're going to court, there's a problem.
Yeah.
That's the end of the matter.
Yeah. Well, let me read you this. So the minute the House of Lords Children and Families Act 2014 Select Committee inquiry is asking for written evidence from various quarters, and the NSPCC have given their written evidence. And interestingly, there's a section in there that are talking about presumption of contact with parents, etc. And so they touch on parental alienation. So let me just read you this, see what you think of this. I don't think you're going to like it. So they make reference to the harm review, which is about family court. And they just say that an issue that's been highlighted is the credence given to the claims of parental alienation, quote unquote, whereby children's views against contact with one parent, and therefore contrary to the presumption of parental involvement, were seen as contaminated by the other parent, usually the mother. Again, making reference to mothers being the victims here more than anyone. This results in claims of domestic or other abuse being dismissed or minimized, while claims of alienation are taken seriously by both judges and other court professionals such as CAFCAS. The NSPCC does not believe there is sufficient evidence to support the concept of parental alienation. What do you think to that?
Well, firstly, it's old. 2017, there are a lot more academics coming online now that are studying this dynamic, and they are studying it in some detail. So it goes back to getting the opportunity to challenge some of these views. It's
by the way,
this cabal of people that are maintaining the dynamic of separating fathers from their children and prolonging family court proceedings, non-government organisations, all these courses, these are all about money. It is a huge money spinner, and all of them have a vested interest. The reports are being submitted to the government. They're all paid for. They're all funded. No matter how ridiculous they may be, all of them have come with an invoice. And we're just not getting the opportunity to counter any of this. We're going on to a different topic now of institutions that have a vested interest in maintaining the current status quo or advancing it, so that there is a presumption of the father does not have contact with his children until he proves himself worthy. So the whole premise of innocent until proven guilty is out of the window in the civil cases like this. You go in there guilty, you've got to prove yourself you're innocent, which is, strictly speaking, is impossible. But what I've found over the past 7 years of helping dads dealing with family breakdown is that the more hoops that you jump through, the more domestic abuse perpetrator programs that you attend, the anger management programs, God knows what else, then as you're ticking these boxes off or jumping through these hoops, then eventually you might be able to have contact with your children, but only at the discretion of the court.
Yeah.
In most cases, they run out of money.
No, it's a huge imbalance, and you've given us a really powerful story of when you're on the wrong end, how it feels to be on the wrong end of all this. Before we wrap up, Craig, is there anything else you wanted to say or add about your story at this point?
This is my story is just one of many, and I don't think it's the worst one in the world either. My issue is mainly connected with how organisations can get involved, act carelessly, and ruin lives. You know, the NSPCC with the DART programme, my son was evaluated by a counsellor who was no way qualified to make that call for his suitability to undertake that programme.
Yeah.
The counsellors are facilitating a programme that I would say, I hope, was professionally constructed by clinical psychologists specialised in child psychology, and they were just delivering. But the fact that they put my son on this programme without completing that checklist, which is there just to fill spaces on a pilot programme that they were keen to implement as soon as possible. There's no scrutiny. I cannot hold them to account. I'm not in a position to sue the NSPCC.
It's just not right, is it? It's just not right. It's just not right. Yeah.
I think moving forward, I think what we need to understand is that there are a lot of people in the background that are working tirelessly on highlighting these issues and trying to come up with a solution, putting people in place who are able to challenge some of this academic material that is backing up these claims. And I think we need to get behind these individuals and these groups and get our agenda on the table, get this evidence into the committee rooms at Westminster. That's how we're going to go forward. It's not, we've tried dressing up as Spider-Man and hanging off Tower Bridge. It's great for getting public attention, but the public aren't that bothered. This is a toxic topic. The media do not want to touch it. And if you talk to people in society in general, they're aware of it, but
well, it'd take a very brave MP. Take a very brave MP to speak up against Vogue. So so that's for sure. Well, look, well done you for holding it together through everything you've been through. I mean, to kind of finish on a positive, you're in a. I take it you're in a healthy relationship now, Craig. Yes.
Yes, I am. I am in a healthy relationship. Things change. Time goes on. As I said, my eldest is coming up to 18 years old, and that's, you speak to dads. That's the golden age. From that point, the dynamic may change. So, rather optimistically, we're waiting to see if anything happens on there. In the meantime, I will carry on helping other people who are affected by this dynamic.
Yeah.
And I think we should all look at doing a bit more research and see who is going to be effective to challenge this narrative. And I think for me in the future, I'm going to be doing more campaigning than I have done in the past.
Brilliant.
And see if we can raise awareness, challenge some of this narrative that all men, that all men should be prevented from seeing their children until they've proved themselves worthy of having contact. Well, because the effects of fatherlessness are well known. We don't have to go into that.
No, absolutely. And again, hopefully coming forward and talking to us is going to help with that awareness. And, I'm hoping that there are other dads that maybe hopefully watch this video and think, I'm ready to tell my story and I'd like to get my story out too. Because I think the more voices we add, it adds weight to counter this nonsense really that we see in the press.
Yeah. But I'd like to catch up with you again in a few months' time. Let's see what we can. Let's see if we can rattle a few cages and see how we can sort of push things forward on a campaigning level, and so support some of the people that are doing this quite in-depth work in the background of doing the studies, of getting the statistics together and challenging some of these reports that are being submitted to the government. We need to just get this out in the open. And until we can get our agenda on the table, we're powerless.
No, absolutely. Okay. Well, that seems like a good place to end it, Craig. And as I said, thank you so much for, bearing everything, because, you really did give the warts and all there, and sort of bared your soul a little bit. But I think it's really appreciated. And I'm sure there'll be people that hear this and, they'll find some guidance and comfort from what they've heard from you. So, thank you so much for sharing your voice with us.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Craig. So this has been Craig, and I'm Nick, and this has been FTD Talk. See you soon.